Welcome back and welcome to part 5 of the module for early childhood intervention. In this section, we're looking at communication and how we work through the processes to do our communication exploration that align with the principles of early childhood intervention. In this section, we'll be looking at the assessment process. We'll be looking at the means, reasons, opportunities model, the initial speech assessment report template for early childhood intervention, and starting intervention. So here at Concentric, the assessment process, or I like to call it the exploration process, starts with the initial phone call. So usually the person who's first allocated, it might not be a speechy, is tasked with making a phone call to the person or the family of the child to gather information, background information, a bit of a case history, answer any parent questions, and plan for that first session and explore any potential risks. Though the form, as you will have seen, is linked in Lumery, we will be reviewing that form to make it more early childhood friendly in order to feed into the family service support plan. But just remember, this could be the first time a family has accessed any service provider. So have a think about what they need from the experience as well as what you need. It doesn't matter if you don't answer all the questions. You can always go back to them at another time and in another session, or contact the family at any time during your journey together. It's good to think about to explain to them that we like to use their toys in the home. So we can ask what toys are there and explain a little bit about what the first session will look like and explain some of the principles of working in partnership with the family. We do want to explore any risks, so we can ask things like, is there anything I need to know? Any safety precautions about coming to your family, or any places that I should or shouldn't park? And ensure you've read any risk assessment covered by the onboarding team. So the initial session is hopefully in the home, and we can try and set that up if it's not planned to be in the home. The purpose of the visit is to get to know the child and the family and share an understanding of early childhood intervention. We want to get a first impression of what their communication strengths and needs look like. We do have the initial speech questionnaire, which could be a good guide to communication, or we could start with the SAFER that might give us some information to determine what would be next. And we might want to do an eco map to see who's who in the family and what supports and strengths they already have. So that can be done flexibly depending on who's in the family and how, I guess, the flow works for them. Then we might want to, following those sessions, do some further assessment. So understand more about the needs and strengths of the family, explore their routines, create an eco map, understand communication strengths and needs, and explore the family's desired outcomes. The means, reasons, opportunities model is a good way to conceptualise language, or communication, particularly in early childhood. I'll talk through the model, but sometimes this is a good way to sort of draw the 3 circles and explore this with parents or teachers so that they can really understand that communication is more than just talking. So the means, or how we communicate, can be verbal and it can be non-verbal. So we might use signs or gesture, we might use symbols, we might use body language or facial expression or body movements, and we might point, we might use objects or pictures, we might write, and we might use our behaviour. So all behaviour is communication. We can change our volume or intonation and rate and tone, and that expresses sometimes a different message. And fluency also impacts the means of communication, and the words and sounds we use make up the rest of the means of communication. So sometimes when we think about the different reasons for communication, we can help families to understand just all the different ways that their child is communicating. What are the reasons for those? But they might not be doing it with words just yet. So why do we communicate? What are the different reasons? We want to gain attention. We might greet or farewell. We might express our wants and needs. We might request information, give information, protest or deny, express our feelings, make choices, express our preferences, and comment. Sometimes it's a great way to talk to families to kind of get them on the way of thinking about this is to think about all the ways they've communicated, say, that morning before they've got to you. So they might have used gesture to someone that cut them off in traffic, or they might have text through their coffee order to their favourite coffee shop. They might have just screwed up their face and or done a bad facial expression to express dissatisfaction to their partner. So all of these things tune them into the fact that talking isn't the only way to communicate. And then we think about the opportunities. So where, when, and with whom do we communicate? So family and partners might be one thing. And if we think about a social networks kind of model, we have those kind of smaller connections, which is usually your common communication partner, maybe the mum or maybe both parents. And then usually the communication is stronger with that main partner, and it might reduce out from there. We think about the different times or different routines of communication, and that's why we might do the SAFER as a routines-based assessment to think about, what a child can communicate in which opportunity, and how do we get them to communicate that same function or reason within a different opportunity. So that might be dinner time or bath time or at the park. Again, the places they go to could be daycare or could be grandma's house, could be school, pre-primary, kindy. And what is the shared language? So different families might use different languages in different routines or different parts of their day. And where are the shared interests? So a child that's really interested in trains, for instance, we might want to develop a lot of these means and reasons within that interest area. And then we want to shape that into something that they might not be as interested in. So this is, I guess, your framework, and then we can use it flexibly to understand where a child's at and what we want to see more of in the future, and what are the opportunities that we can provide in order to develop those skills. So you might want to stop the recording for a moment here and have a think about what speech and language assessment tools do you currently use? What are your favourites? We do want to have completed some of the previous assessment tools, like the routines-based assessment and the ECOMAP, prior to getting to this point, so we understand the family's desired outcomes and the child's strengths and needs in terms of routines and natural learning environments before we need to decide more specifically what language assessment or communication assessment might be appropriate. So you might already use things like comparing what the child does to developmental norms. Now, remembering that some kids with global developmental delay would not be expected to be meeting developmental milestones. So that can be a guide to helping us think about what's next, but not necessarily to determine where they're at in an age-appropriate sense when we wouldn't be expecting them to be age-appropriate. There's some nice checklists in the Hannon It Takes Two and the Hannon More Than Words, which are on the drive if you want to have a look at those or talk to your mentor about those. And then, of course, we've got the more standardised tools, which can go hand in hand with the SAFER or the satire. So the Self P3 will give us a more detailed language assessment for those kids 3 to 6. The Rossetti is a good one for those 0 to 36 months. However, if you're working with, say, a 6-year-old who is quite delayed, we can still use this as a guide to where they are developmentally and what might be next steps. And we would comment on that if we write that in a report. The MacArthur Bates is a way of tracking vocabulary. There's also the Aussie, which is more of an Australian normed one, which is available on the drive. The bus story test is for 3 to 8-year-olds, and the Renfrew action picture test is from 3 to 8.5 years. There's others such as the real. So have a think about what works for you and what is really going to give you more information that aligns with the family's desired outcomes. Of course, if we are trying to get more funding and we need to give a norms-based assessment, you can use one of the standardised assessment tools. But we do want to explain to the parents why we're using that and that we don't expect the child to necessarily be age appropriate. There's been a recent update in the Early Childhood Speech Pathology Initial Assessment Report. Please have a look at the link to familiarise yourself with the format. It does align with all of the principles, so it's written in a little bit different style than you'd be used to. If you need any support, please reach out to your clinical mentor. Basically, the report summarises the needs of the child and the family and their background. We can put in the NDIS goals. If they haven't shared the goals with you, we do need at least the communication goal that we're working towards shared, so that we know that we're using funding in the way it was intended. We look closer into routines, and we might do some observations in one of their natural learning environments. Then we state the priority areas, and from there we determine what speech and language assessments are appropriate to look in further detail and how we're going to use that. There's a number of assessment tools in there with some background descriptions to help you write those reports. You can put all of that standardised information in the appendix if you like, and just write the report in a very family-centred way. Then we discuss the communication goals. These can be overarching goals with other disciplines, so related to routines, and what our recommendations are going forward for what their clinical needs are. So to plan our outcomes, aligning with the principle of outcomes focus, what do we need to do? So firstly, we prioritise the desired outcomes, and we document those in the family's own words, written in a positive way. So what will we see, not what we want to see less of, but what we actually want to see in place of whatever they're talking about. We'll share our assessment reports and document any next steps that align with the family's priorities, capacity, and is informed by the clinical assessment results. Then we plan goals together in partnership with the family carers and other supports. It's good to think about the third word rule when thinking about writing goals. So Johnny will jump, say, look. What is the skill we want to see developed? The GAS scale, so goal attainment scale, is on the family service support plan in the action plan kind of box. Now, if we want to use this, we often ask families, what does this look like now? When was a time where it wasn't that great, and how did you get from there to here, which develops them as the agent of change? And then if it was one step better, what would we want to see? If we capture that in their own words and then explore the strategies that we've talked about that might align with the family, and think about if we were doing all of those strategies, like embedding language modelling into daily routines, what would we see? What would we hope to see? So something like bath time, if we're scrubbing or pouring water over body parts, we might expect it after a period of time, if we're modelling body parts every bath time, that they might start to understand. If we say, let's wash your foot, they might indicate that comprehension by putting their foot up. Let's wash your hand. They might put their hand in front of you. So that's a great outcome from using something that's really quite functional. So just think about that when you're planning goals with a family. There will be a connection and collaboration meeting, and this will replace what we used to call the MDT meeting, which is obviously expert language, and we'll capture these goals and document them in Loomry so we're all on the same page. Of course, at any time, they can be reviewed and deprioritised if it's not important to a family or something else is more important. So the constant review process is really important, and make sure you capture that in Loomry. If we write our goal reviews in Loomry in a nice written form, then that can create a report for us. And so if someone asks for a quick progress report, if we've got our NDIS goals in there, if we've got what the goal is and then the different steps that have taken for each review, the report prints itself, and it makes it really easy to provide a quite nice, succinct report should somebody ask for it in a hurry. So how do we approach the treatment or intervention period? We think about what is the priority for the family, and depending on the capacity of the child and the family, we might just start with one area of priority or desired outcome. Usually the key therapist at Concentric starts with whoever had the capacity to pick up the child most efficiently. So first off, So it's good to always reflect on, is the person who's the key therapist the best fit for the family and the best fit in relation to their desired outcomes. So that can be constantly under review and discussion, depending on their needs. We need to be well planned in how we're going to work collaboratively. Is it just going to be one person that sees the family more often, and all the communication should be fed through the key therapist? So it's good to have a discussion and think about what that's going to look like. It's good, if we've done the SAFER, to think about what routine should we start with. Someone with limited capacity, we might want to do more of something good that's happening good. So I just was talking about a client today who loves bath time, puts all the kids in the bath when she needs a bit of a break. So that might be a great time to embed some goals into that part of the day, particularly some language goals, because it's already fun and we can strengthen her capacity and ability to reflect on their capacity as a family if we're just doing more of something that's already going well. We can think about the natural learning environment. So that could be at daycare, at home, at kindy. It could be through one of the routines at the day. It could be at grandma's house or dad's house if the parents aren't together. So think of the different environments and how we can embed strategies into that environment. It's good to plan how we're going to reflect and review progress or lack of progress. So it's always good to have those check-ins very frequently. It's great to celebrate the wins. So along the way, always good to check in and celebrate those little changes and check in on the model of practice that's best to support this family and the level of funding that's available in order to do that. As always, if you need any support, your clinical mentor is always there for you. You can also talk to your clinical team leader if it's more of an operational question. The speech team are always willing to help. Throw something in the speech chat if you need a question answered. And the multidisciplinary team, of course, we want to work together. I think if you've stuck on anything, just have a look back at the national framework and think about the principles that we're trying to embed into our practice and just explore whether you're meeting those principles or not. Some families will have experienced a more expert approach. So if you need concerns about discussing with them why this approach is best practice, please reach out to one of us and we're more than happy to support you with those discussions. Hope you enjoy working in this way. It is very rewarding.